In 2009, Rocksteady redefined the superhero video game in Batman Arkham Asylum. 2 years later, in 2011, Rocksteady delivered not only a worthwhile successor, but also a very satisfying three-woman experience in a much more ambitious space. But what happens when you take away this beloved franchise and hand it over to another developer? Does Batman Arkham Origins live up to its predecessor's reputation, or does it just hide behind its dark shadow? In many ways, Warner Bros. Montreal's iteration in the franchise is an entirely different animal. Rather than continuing the story of Arkham City, Arkham Origins is a prequel and instead bases its story on a much younger and less experienced Batman. This incarnation of Batman is still in the early stages of his crime-fighting career, and although this is not a Batman Begins or Year One story, you can clearly see a young man behind the cowl who does not know what he's getting himself into. This version of Batman makes mistakes and is much more prone to violent outbreaks, and I would probably say he has some anger issues.
Too late. I already have what I need.
No! You're crazy! You're freaking
Like the previous games, the story takes place over one night, in this case Christmas Eve. Batman has recently begun to make a name for himself in the criminal underworld, and Black Mask has taken notice. He places a $50 million bounty on the Dark Knight's head and hires 8 professional assassins, including memorable Batman villains such as Bane and Killer Croc. The arrival of these assassins also leads to villains such as the Penguin and the Joker, this time voiced by Troy Baker, to launch their own schemes. The narrative takes place around a fully realized and explorable Gotham City, and although the city is not populated by citizens, they're all waiting for Santa Claus. This is still an improvement over the area of Arkham City. The story has its moments, such as the introduction of Troy Baker as the Joker, and the writing is of cinematic value. However, the plot never really takes any chances, and most of the story will have you going from point A to point B, in order to formulaically bring the story across all of Gotham City. The fact that the story is a prequel also has its disadvantages, as it's restrained by its narrative choices chosen in the past games. Still though, the story shows the same overall production value as the past games, and fans of the Caped Crusader will be satisfied. The game still carries over the same incredibly fun combat system, exploration mechanics, and incredible amount of references to the source material, and much of the gameplay remains unchanged. Batman has a few new gadgets, but much of the innovation comes from the addition of another area of Gotham City to explore. Gotham City is no longer sanctioned off, and the entirety of the city is filled with side quests, Enigma trophies, which are pretty much Riddler trophies, and fast travel stations that can be explored. In addition to this, there are some new upgrades to the Dark Knight system, and Batman can gain skills via progressing to the story, completing side quests, gaining collectibles, etc., etc. Personally, I never felt the urge to explore any of these other additions because, honestly, I felt a little bit bored after going through the story and felt no compelling reason to do any of the side activities.
Maybe you're not as stupid as I've been led to believe.
Boss battles also add a new dynamic to the game. Unlike previous games, where boss battles relied very heavily on exploiting enemies' weak point and were extremely repetitive, the boss battles in Arkham Origins each feel very unique. These battles are a test of skill, and in order to beat these battles, players will have to, beat the bad guys. The only boss battles I did not enjoy at all was Deathstroke. I could not even begin to explain just how repetitive and tedious this boss battle was, and quite frankly, it just wasn't fun. This is probably the only significant improvement that Warner Bros. Has made, and aside from that, there really isn't any new innovations in terms of structure of the gameplay. It feels more like an expansion of Arkham City, and unlike the jump from Asylum to City, the game feels pretty much the same. That's not necessarily a bad thing, of course. The core mechanics of the game are what made fans enjoy the series so much in the first place. However, it is clear that Warner Bros. Montreal was very careful in making any significant changes, and as a result, Origins feels more like an abandoned love child. So here's what I think of Arkham Origins. Story gets a 9. The overall narrative of the game is fulfilling, and Batman's villains are interesting as always. Although still a dark tale, the story never goes to the same morally simulating levels of the past games. Design gets a 7. The addition of Gotham City is a nice novelty, but that's pretty much it. In addition, the interior design is very confusing at times, and I was often left wondering how anybody in Gotham City manages to get any work done with the way the buildings are designed. Seriously, you would have to have Google Maps open on your phone at all times to navigate anywhere. Gameplay gets an 8. The implementation of gadgets onto the environment, as well as the new additions to detective mode, are nice but nothing really substantial. The combat system remains relatively unchanged, but it is still always fun to pull out the finishing move on a thug. Presentation gets a 9. I played the PC version of the game on the ultra high settings and the game looks amazing. Frame rate drops are pretty much non-existent and for the most part the game went very smoothly. Unfortunately, some of the textures look really muddy and the lips just look really weird. Replay value gets a 9. In addition to the 10-hour story mode, there are many side quests available, and while I personally did not enjoy them, the options are still there. In addition, there are combat challenges and predator modes. Overall, Batman Arkham Origins gets an 8.4. Although not a total disappointment, Batman Arkham Origins never really moves the series forward or makes any relevant innovations. And although other elements are there, they are never really developed or inspired, and the game lives in the shadows of its predecessors.